Martin stood motionless in the stone-paved courtyard of Fairmont Crest, where the hanging lights shimmered as if they were trying to hide all the fractures the Dupree family was facing. He was used to being the one in the middle, the one who had to keep everything from falling apart, but this time he felt like a chess piece being dragged in different directions by too many hands. As the battle between the sisters flared up again, he was forced to choose a side, or at least create the impression that he was standing with someone. But when he looked deep into the true nature of each person, he knew his choice was not simply about siding with one individual. It could trigger the collapse of the entire system he had spent so long trying to protect. He understood all too well that in every power struggle, each side wanted to use him as a tool, yet he also knew he was hiding a plan no one had yet guessed. A plan built from dissatisfaction, from long festering wounds, and from the belief that if he did not save himself, no one else would. So was he really standing with one of the sisters, or was he just playing a role as perfectly as possible to keep his secret from falling into the hands of those who would gladly destroy him? While Martin was juggling ambition and duty, Shanice stood in a completely different position, yet was swept into a vortex of emotions she herself had not anticipated. She looked at Leslie with an expression that could not conceal her irritation and wariness, because between them existed a quiet kind of rivalry, a heavy, charged energy that was always on the verge of exploding. Shanice had always believed Leslie was the kind of woman willing to step over anyone, over any rule, to protect what she considered hers. And what made everything more dangerous was Ted, the man who always seemed to draw out the darkest corners of the women around him. When Shanice warned Leslie, she spoke not only from observation but from an anxiety that was eating away at her little by little. But the real question was that anxiety truly for Leslie's sake, or for the sake of the secret Shanice herself was desperately trying to hide? A secret tied to Ted, something that, if exposed, could shatter the fragile balance of Fairmont Crest. Shanice knew Leslie had an uncanny ability to sense danger from afar, and Leslie's jealousy was never something simple. If Leslie kept suspecting, kept digging, might she eventually stumble on the very piece Shanice had tried so hard to bury, the one that could drag them all into a bottomless abyss? In another shadowed corner of the community, Naomi stood amid the chaos inside her own mind. She dodged every question Bill asked about the state of her marriage, and with each evasion, she felt herself pushing him deeper into a growing sense of suspicion. But Naomi knew better than anyone that her marriage was no longer a normal relationship. It had become a game built on calculation and fear. Something was growing inside her, not just guilt or exhaustion, but something she dared not face, the possibility that she was pregnant and did not know who the child belonged to. She was trapped between one man she wanted to trust and another figure she had tried to forget but could not erase. Bill's gaze grew sharper, more probing, and Naomi felt each of his questions like a blade slicing through her defenses. She apologized to Haley in an attempt to preserve a fragile illusion of peace, but was that apology meant to cover her mistakes, or to keep Haley from stumbling onto an even more dangerous secret? And if that secret were ever exposed, would Bill become her protector, or the one who destroyed her life? Meanwhile, Ted, the man around whom most of Fairmont Crest's troubles seemed to orbit, stood at Peach's bedside. Her body was so frail that each breath was like a thin thread that could snap at any moment. Ted tended to her with a calm demeanor, but inside he was a tangle of conflicting emotions. Was he truly helping out of compassion and because of Leslie's desperate pleas? Or because he knew Peaches was holding a fragment of truth that, if spoken aloud, could obliterate the reputation of one of the Dupree children? Ted was not someone easily controlled, but he was not the kind of man to let an opportunity slip by either. In Peaches' closed eyes, Ted saw confessions never voiced, buried secrets, and the terrifying power she still held even while lying on a hospital bed. A secret that, if it slipped out, could cost one of the Dupree offspring their entire life. So the question was not whether Ted was helping Peaches out of kindness, but who he was really protecting. Leslie, Peaches, or himself? And if Peaches, in a rare lucid moment, decided to reveal everything, would Ted let it happen? The tension between the characters came not only from personal secrets but also from an invisible force threading its way through Fairmont Crest. The sisters' clashes might have looked like ordinary family disputes, but they carried the taste of orchestration. Leslie's emotions when she saw Ted beside Peaches felt as if they were being stirred by an unseen hand, as though someone were scripting their every movement and choice. Naomi sensed that the turmoil inside her body was not just the consequence of her mistakes, but as if someone wanted to see her crumble. Shanice kept being forced into positions where she had to defend herself against accusations that could crash down at any moment. And Martin, the one who seemed to be in control, felt watched, nudged into exactly the places some hidden force had mapped out for him. Everything became suspect, every action seemed laced with intent. The characters began to question whether their conflict truly originated from within, or if someone else was standing behind them, lighting the fuse. Was there a force inside Fairmont Crest, a bitter former member, a forgotten rival, or a group determined to break the Dupree power, manipulating events to drive everyone into chaos? Watching each step they took, prodding at each weakness, and waiting for the moment this powerful family would destroy itself? The deeper they sank into that spiral, the more each character felt themselves being cornered against an invisible wall. Martin realized that choosing a side was only the surface. Beneath it was a war over honor, power, and his own survival. Shanice understood that if her secret about Ted came to light, not only her career but her safety could be at risk. Naomi felt that the child in her womb, if it truly existed, might become the spark for a much larger war between people who were never supposed to be connected. Leslie stood at the edge of losing the only mother she had, while simultaneously facing the fear of being betrayed by the man she trusted. Ted knew that every move he made would be scrutinized, and any misstep could turn him into the enemy of the entire Crest. Peaches, though weakened, had become the center of all secrets, the one holding the shard that could make the truth explode like glass. And that force in the shadows, if it truly existed, was still waiting for the moment when all of Fairmont Crest would erupt. What did they want? To tear the Dupree family apart? To avenge some buried injustice? To seize the power the family possessed? Or to use the chaos as cover for an even greater crime? All those questions hung in the air, heavy and threatening, ready to fall on anyone who slipped up. And each of them, whether strong or fragile, felt something steadily swelling inside, the fear that the worst was yet to come, and that they had only just stepped into the first phase of a storm no one could predict the end of.